Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are talking about some new machine learning features, particularly neural net related ones for the upcoming version of Wolfram Language. And needless to say, there's a 11th hour addition to the documentation that's happening even as we speak. All right, so let's get, oh boy. Wow, this is kind of complicated. Okay. Okay, let's just take a look at what we're roughly looking at here. So training metrics. Let's see. What is the point here? So net port of loss 1. I don't really understand this. Okay, so help me out.
Sure. I mean, the big picture is that until now we've had a somewhat it's been somewhat hard-coded set of metrics. So just the total loss, which of course is what drives the training, and then as of the last version, the error rate for classification type training.
By the way, can I update the docs?
You can.
Okay, go ahead.
And there's a whole kind of jungle of metrics beyond just error rate, and many of them are on classifier measurements. And so what we're doing here is we kind of giving a way for people to request some of those metrics to be able to see them plotted during training. And there are other ways that they can use those metrics. So after training, they could get like a history of that metric. And they could also observe the metric from callback functions. That's another important thing. And that metric could also be used to help influence when training stops. Like if that metric stops improving, then that could be a signal that training should be terminated. And then there are two kinds of metrics. There's going to be built-in ones and there's going to be user-provided ones. The user-provided ones will be provided via a port, and the built-in ones will be from a fixed sort of list of things we have built-in support for.
Okay, so net port is tapping off something in the network, right?
Yeah. And if it's a single string, that's an output port. But if it's a hierarchical kind of list, then that can be some internal
and what
value.
Does the arrow L2 mean?
That is an aggregation. So if the thing you're tapping off is an array, then the metric does eventually need to become a scalar value so that you can plot it.
And so what is L2?
That is that's
the L2 norm or what?
Yeah, it's the L2 norm.
But why isn't that a function? I mean, ultimately that's going to be an array that's coming out of that. Why is that thing somehow not a function there?
Well, it would be nice if we had a function called L2 norm, but we don't.
What would L2 norm do?
You give it a tensor and it gives you the L2 norm of the tensor.
No, but isn't that just norm?
It's norm of hash comma 2, maybe. Is it?
Norm of the thing comma 2, yes, which doesn't strike me as the most difficult function. I think it defaults to the L2 norm, actually.
Okay. Could be things as well. So like the actual list, which I'm not sure if I've written there, other obvious things are like total, max, mean, and so on. But it's a little bit different from our ordinary meaning of total, because our ordinary meaning of total it's only totals to level 1,
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know is that a sum? I don't know what exactly to call that. That's not the most important thing. We can check back with you.
Right. List. Let's see. Actually, we have 2 questions on our live stream, which we'll try to address, but then one is, will Gann training be supported?
Should I answer that now?
You can answer that if it's quick.
We already support a form of Gann training where we simultaneously train the generator and the discriminator. That's actually a known style of training of GANs. I can't remember the exact name for it. We do not support alternating training unless you call nettrain yourself alternating, which can be slow. We do have a design for that, but not for version 12.
And the state of the optimizer get lost.
Yes, the state of the optimizer would also get lost if you called nettrain yourself in an alternating fashion.
Right, but so do we have a design for the alternating Gann strategy?
We do, but it's complicated. It's not. It's I think it will change before we are happy with it. But the basic rough idea is that you specify multiple. You kind of have an association of different networks, right? Instead of one network, and then you actually specify multiple nettrains worth of spec, along with the schedule for how to switch between them. That's the key idea. And it's just how to present that is the tricky part.
Right. Well, several people on our live stream are encouraging GANs. So suggest a design, guys. Somebody's asking about multi-GPU support and efficient training in the cloud. Yes, it is coming. Temporal convolution networks are more effective than LSTM's GRUs. What is the story with that?
I mean, we have read that paper. I don't have a particular opinion on whether that case has been successfully made, that LSTMs should be abandoned.
Right. Okay. Separate story. All right. Let's go back to this. This is complicated stuff. Okay. So, what are we supposed to be looking at here? So this is the training metrics option to. I don't quite understand. How is it by default using the training network? So if I give that as an option, can I run this somewhere? By the way, can I run it in prototype build?
No, that's not even implemented yet. We're in the process of. Jamie and I are in the process of implementing that.
Okay. Okay, someone is commenting that using Wolfram Language for Kaggle competitions is enjoyable, but I have to hack around the lack of mean IOU metrics. Any comments on that?
I mean,
it's another random metric.
Yes, it's something we could.
Yeah, it's the main metric for object detection. So it would be something nice to have at some point.
Okay, sounds like we have at least one vote for it there. Okay. All right. So what is this an option to? Is this an option to nettrain or what?
Yes, it is an option to nettrain.
So should I open the nettrain page?
Sure. Yep.
Is it an option to anything other than nettrain? Why is by the way, who is working through? I don't know who works through these keyword resolutions.
I have not seen those before.
Okay. Do we have a project manager in here?
I'm here.
Okay. Do you know the procedure for this? These looks like Philip added these things.
I don't know the procedure for that, but I can find out.
He added them last month. So why don't we find out how they seem quite sensible? Why did he add them, and how do we who gets to approve them so that they go live?
Okay.
All right. So are you saying you've added this option, or I have to add this option?
Well, we haven't written the documentation for this. We want you to approve the rough design or help us kind of decide what the best.
Training progress checkpointing was your last adventure in this, right? So you're not and max training rounds. So training metrics is supposed to be an option that goes in here. So what does training metrics actually do?
So it's a request. So it's a list of things that you would like access to. And access means several things. It means they will be plotted.
Okay, I understand. So let me give you an analogy to this, okay? Which is handler function keys. You know those things?
Yep.
So that's the thing that determines when a handler in an asynchronous call, what is going to be provided to the handler. Right?
Yeah.
So arguably, this isn't training metrics, it's training metric keys, but then what function is going to call this?
You can scroll down a little bit. I do mention that in this notebook. It's underneath the training metrics section. It certainly will be added to the list of things. Oh, wait, stop. How do we present metrics losses to callbacks? Yeah. These need to be printed in the callback association that all callbacks get given. Callbacks are training progress function, training reporting.
Okay, so wait, hold on. Training progress function. Okay, so let's look at the training progress function. Okay. Where association is association with the following keys. Okay, so these keys are being supported, but there are additional ones that you are proposing could be added to this list that are being specified by the by these training keys.
Correct.
Right. So and these you're providing these ones because they're cheap, is that right?
Cheap and useful. This story is actually changing quite a lot, and the reason is that this metric thing will subsume some of these, right? And also, there's another feature in this notebook called, I call them history, property histories.
Yeah, I saw that.
Feature also subsumes a huge chunk of things.
Okay, so hold on. Let's unravel this for a second. Okay, so basically what you're saying is this is okay. So first point, let's see. This training metrics is really training keys or something.
Here's why I don't agree with that name. It's putting the emphasis on the callbacks, but for most users, they're unlikely to look at it in a callback. They really want to see it plotted.
Okay, so wait a minute. So are you saying that by default, training metrics will cause these things to be plotted?
It will certainly do that, yes.
And as a side effect, it will be available in callbacks or what?
Mm-hmm.
But are these things that you're proposing here, are they sufficiently expensive that we can't provide them? Oh, I see. You're saying training metrics could be the L2 aggregation of that net port. But then how do I refer to that thing? If that is really a key, what is its name here?
That's a good question. So that's in the final paragraph of this section.
Oh, that's horrifying. Is this the proposal?
No, that's the short name. So that would be for plotting purposes, where it's more important that it's just human readable than it's,
Okay. So what are you proposing here? What is this?
So if you go down to the final paragraph, so it's the question.
Oh my gosh, look at this horrifying stuff. So you're proposing that this type of thing be able to be one of the, so you're proposing that any of the things that are in here, I could say F1 score interval arrow round or something. Is that right?
Sure. I mean, that precedent applies to a lot of these things, is that they support either spec or open list spec, interval arrow something. Like it's true of the training progress functions, for example. So, you can configure them. There's a sort of default, and then you can also configure them with these sub options.
Oh boy. Okay. But then this stuff is just some random, it's like that has nothing to do with keys or anything. That just has to do with, hello, this is for plotting.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, but it's that's what you do with metrics, right? You see them at the end and you plot them.
Or you use them to determine whether you're going to stop.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, to me, this is, okay, so there's two things that come out of these metrics. One is their plotting destination, so to speak, and the other is their keying, their use as keys. which will then be fed into other functions. Is that correct? In other words, the default action. So let me just understand. So here, the default action for a default usage of a training metric is what? Is plot it, correct? That's it?
Yeah, I think that is the use case that most people will want from training metrics, is they will want to just be able to look at it while the network is training.
Okay, but so what about somebody who wants it as a key, but doesn't want to plot it?
I'm skeptical that even occurs, and the reason is that this is another thing that you should opine on, obviously. But for plotting, it's going to get out of control if we introduce even one more thing, like one more metric. We've already got loss and error rate, okay, and that's already occupies quite a bit of space. So if you start introducing any more metrics, it kind of gets ludicrous. And so we're going to need to.
We have multi-panel. Don't we have this multi-pane display? Well,
we don't have it, but yes, that's what I want to do, to handle the explosion of metrics so that you're not penalized for having, and in that case, the fact that there'll be another button on the panel just is irrelevant. Like, you don't have to look at it if you don't want to look at it. The default would be loss.
Okay.
And there's another point as well. It's another one of these sections in this notebook, which is there's an obvious thing we've been missing for all these versions. I don't know why we didn't think of it. And that is, do you recall training progress reporting goes to panel? That is the current default behavior.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
An ephemeral panel. What we've been missing is training progress reporting goes to window. And what window would do is pop up a window with the panel in it, maybe taking a little bit more luxury.
What does it do in the cloud, for example? Does it go to your web browser and pop up another window in the cloud?
Well, it doesn't even work in the cloud because it requires too high a refresh rate to be usable in the cloud. So even panel doesn't work in the cloud.
What does the cloud do?
I think it prints by default, which is what also happens on the console.
Okay. Is that something that could be fixed? Because I don't think does it really require that higher refresh rate? I mean, why not just reduce the refresh rate?
I'll make a note of that. I will look into that. Things might.
So what I would imagine is an update interval.
Yeah.
Option. Okay.
Yeah. There is already an update interval option, but the question is, I suppose that you're asking is, and it's a good question.
No, there isn't.
If we just set that for what?
NetTrain.
No. For training progress reporting.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a sub option of that. Maybe it shouldn't be. Interval goes to.
Oh boy, pretty wild. Okay, all right, fine. Okay.
But the reason I mentioned the window thing is, first of all, what do you think of the idea? I think it's a good idea. I hope you agree.
No. It's a good piece of functionality. I'm just worried about the many tentacles that it starts introducing.
Sure.
Because I mean, it's not a common thing, except for things like notebook open and system open and so on. We're not, opening random windows with wild abandon.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it does have a very nice property that when I've mentioned this to other people, they've all said, "Oh, that's good." And that is that it means that the window doesn't, the losses, that the beautiful curves we made don't disappear as soon as training is finished.
Oh, wait. So you're not garbage collecting the window. It's a non-modal dialogue, effectively. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it goes to its final state and then it sits there.
Yeah, like your original NetTrain would have returned, but the window will be still.
Well, let me point out that there's another case, which is you can have the panel not disappear. I mean, the panel is currently a print temporary. You could have that panel just sit there after the ending, within the main notebook after the ending of the NetTrain.
What should we call that? Permanent panel.
Persistent panel. I don't know.
Persistent panel.
That seems actually, honestly, more useful than the random window one, because it's like, I'm just worried that there's so many different issues that come up with when you're popping up a random window on the screen. How big is it? Where does it go? What happens in this case? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So the nice thing with the window would be if we could make it really big, and then you'd have like a much more detailed view of all your plots. Could make it easier to interpret those plots.
Wait, what happens if you resize the window with the panel in it?
I mean, it's very easy to make the window non-resizable. Like I think we'd want to do that so that we can guarantee it lays out in a nice way.
I'm sorry, you want the panel non-resizable?
No, the window. If we do have a window, a persistent window.
Yeah.
The argument for, I see what you're saying, that it's a precedent breaking thing. The argument for doing it is that
the argument for doing it is that you always do that, Tally, but never mind that. Okay, go on.
Sure. It's that in other frameworks, I mean, like in TensorFlow has this thing called TensorBoard, for example, and it's a very detailed and rich kind of environment for interrogating training as it's happening. And it's the kind of thing that it gets awkward to fit that into a panel without it sort of dominating the entire screen.
Right.
And being quite obnoxious.
There are lots of interesting comments on our live stream, but one has just caught my eye here is somebody promoting the window idea, as long as it launches a subkernel so you can keep computing in your notebook. And there is where the tentacles start grabbing us and strangling us.
Won't session submit actually be a straightforward solution to that request?
Yes, session submit does that, but whether session submit, I mean, is this notebook? I'm confused. I mean, the fact is, if you want to do net train with session submit, that should just work. Do you think it does work?
Do you want to try quickly? One line. It's just a one line.
One liner. Fine. And then we'll get back to this. Okay. So what do you want to do? You want to do a net train on something.
This is undocumented syntax that maybe people on the live stream will enjoy. Use the string Linnet as the first argument to net train.
Gosh. Okay.
And then use the second string MNIST. Second argument MNIST.
I love the way that this is just one of these random undocumented things. Why don't we document that? That's the equivalent of net train of net model of Linnets, right?
Exactly, it is, yeah. And the second thing is resource data, basically. Try that?
I don't see why we shouldn't document this. It seems like a good thing to me. Okay, so you want me to try it here? Well, that's not encouraging, is it? Why isn't it running? Oh, okay. We should document this. That's very nice. Okay, dandy. All right. Now you want me to do session submit of that.
Yeah.
Great. Now what happened?
I don't know.
Okay. What would you have expected that to do?
Well, I mean, that does represent a task that's running in a subkernel.
Yes, it is a task in a subkernel.
And how would one ordinarily know? I mean, I haven't used this feature much. How would one know when that is finished?
Oh, you can basically say you can ask for task. What do you ask for? You ask for. I think you just ask for the properties of the task object to find out what's happening with it.
There's a task wait or something that you would synchronize.
Oh yeah, but that's for synchronization. That's not what I want. It's super bad sign that I've got a spinning wheel here. So remember, session submit actually submits to run this in the idle time of the session. Okay, Sushma is here, right?
Yes, I am.
Please take a screenshot.
Yeah.
Please report this. I bet that this is so much for this running asynchronously there. This is tangling itself up with the preemptive kernel nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, if that task is running in a preemptive, I mean, the things you can't do in a preemptive evaluation, right? Including the crazy library link stuff.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but if you thought that this was going to bring up a window, even though you submitted it asynchronously, then you're definitely wrong about that.
So what is the subtask? Is that task submit rather than session submit?
Is local submit, which is
yeah,
another
Local submit.
Local submit.
Okay.
I mean, cloud submits to the cloud. Local submits to your local machine, and that creates a subkernel. This is within the same. Look, this would be a much more sensible thing. Local submit of this would be much more sensible. Session submit is really trying to run it within your, actually within this process, right? Which is like very, scary. Make sense?
Yeah.
So if we do that, we could just ask for task status of that. Running, how helpful. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a a tree falling in the forest with nobody to listen, because it didn't do anything. At the end of this, it's just going to say, "Great, I finished."
Does it return the value that expression yielded?
Not unless
look, evaluation result. Surely that's the answer.
Yes, and that's that's right. That is actually an answer. Yes, that is the answer. So we can say %1 evaluation result. Yeah, we just changed the way that works in the cloud so that the evaluation result doesn't just go away immediately. Okay, in any case, okay, somebody's pointing out, go ahead.
It should be done by now, like it's 30 seconds or so.
Well, then maybe that's because it's no longer available. If we do a task status there, it still says it's running.
Okay, weird. Anyway, you were saying?
I was saying, someone on the live stream is pointing out that the NetTrain panel has a tendency to freeze the front end. It would be nice to add a display refresh rate.
So I think it depends a lot on. So one of the causes for that, so I've seen this a lot, is if the network takes a long time to evaluate, the network evaluation at the moment is not servicing preemptive evaluations. So for slow networks, it'll freeze the front end.
That's not good. So, okay, so what's the solution there?
The solution is to basically run everything in separate threads.
No, I mean, that's the solution for us, but is the solution... Okay.
Oh, for people, sorry.
Yeah, explain. So you're saying that changing the display refresh rate wouldn't have an effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, it wouldn't have an effect, exactly. It's just if any function call takes more than 5 seconds, then the front end will complain and then warn about dynamic evaluation.
Has anybody talked to the people who know about the whole dynamic mechanism about that? Is there any other solution to that? There might be.
It was a while ago. I will check.
Okay. 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 Before we get back to this, a few other comments from our live stream. How about something similar to the function repository, but for custom untrained nets? Why isn't one just putting those in the neural net repository? The neural net repository does not require that networks be trained. There's an untrained network component. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so those could be in the neural net repository.
And also,
yeah.
Previously, so I guess the one thing that was previously before 12 is that you can't have something like a parameterized networks or builder function. Like they would have to live in the function repository. So you could say, I want these number of parameters.
Okay. So parameterized networks are coming to the net repository. Is that happening? Has that happened yet, or that's happening imminently? Right? Did it already happen?
Yes, we're waiting on a single change to go through to.
Okay, because that's going to be all these things that say, I mean, like these are going to be parameterized nets. Is that true? For instance, I mean, you have endless language models, right? Which are going to be
parameterized by language, for example. Yes, there'll be tons of those, and there will be this case of infinite families of models where you specify things like the depth or the width of a specific kind of like CelluNet is the classic example.
Okay. Next point. NetTrain ought to be able to more clearly to be able to do everything that classify and predict can do with method arrow neural nets, e.g. utility function. I don't know about that. I mean, only recently has classify with neural nets been dramatically improved. You guys haven't been the ones involved in that, have you?
I've been somewhat involved. So I proposed the method a while back. So yes, it's basically self-normalizing networks, which give very competitive performance with things like random forest. Sometimes better.
Okay, so Seth Chandra is recommending that we look at his posts on Wolfram community about utility function and so on. So perhaps Sushma can surface that. Someone is asking here about custom layers. Yes, indeed, custom layers are under development. I don't know whether are they even going to make it in some experimental form for 12?
Maybe,
No.
maybe an internal context, but not in a way that we can guarantee it'll be unchanged for 12.1. Know what I mean? So like there might be a sneak peek.
There's different kinds of custom layers though, right? Like net function is not really a custom layer.
What is it? I thought net function. What's that?
It's just a different way of
function. Yeah, it's a neural network as a program.
Fine. So you're saying, what you're saying is, I don't know what we're even calling it. What are we calling custom layers? Function layer. Is that right?
Maybe it was function layer.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Right. Which can have arbitrary code in it.
Yeah, well, it'll be arbitrary in the sense that it'll have to be compilable with the new compiler.
Right. And
you specify both the forward function and also the gradient function. So you have complete control of.
Does anybody know if the current version of the compiler is in the head branch build?
It wasn't yesterday, I think.
Great.
Does that have a time? Is that a 12.1 or is it a 12.x?
Which? The compiler?
Or 1x.x. Yeah.
The compiler will be in 12.0. Some version of the compiler will be in 12.0. I mean, we can. What on earth did this just do? Oh, I see. So if I say function compile of actually, I have to remember how to use all of this stuff. Of function. I mean, all of this. What's that?
No, I'm also just looking at it. It is in the latest version.
It is in the latest version?
Seems like it. Function compile is defined. So let's see.
See if this works. But then this should. Do you know if the oh, for goodness sake. Well, who knows? Oh, maybe this needs an integer 6. You see, this is low-level nonsense, right?
Low level. Integer 60. Okay.
There it is. Okay. Horrifying. Yeah, good. So what's more interesting, I think, is if this is working. What is it called? The compiled code export function. Maybe Sushma remembers what that's now called.
Function compile export.
But
Tom did not add that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Because that will produce the raw
embed code, surely.
Pieces of it are embed code. There's 3 separate functions. There's function compile export. There's function compile export string, and these all do different things because they're producing .o files or they're producing assembler code or other things. So different stuff. Let's see. Okay. Someone's commenting that something is a perfect place to use the annotation design discussed in a previous stream. I'm guessing. Oh, I'm not exactly sure what they were talking about, but it might have been this business about the plot labels and so on. I agree. That is a good comment. Okay, and let's see. No good way to evaluate networks that are trained to do regression. Predictor measurements should be able to take trained net graphs also.
No, we agree. We do agree.
And predictive net would make a predictor. That's an interesting idea. So in other words, if you give a network, what's that?
No, we agree.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to business here. Okay. So looking at this again. So you're saying training metrics gives a list of things that will be plotted and which are also available as keys to compute from. Is that correct?
Yes. And so I think that the order of importance is 1, the plotting. 2, once the thing is finished training, the training results object, should you have used that, should you have asked for that, will contain the final values of those metrics. Because it's one thing to like see things visually, and it's another thing to, once you finish training, to be able to write down.
So what is the name of a thing, of a weird creature like this?
So that's a good question. I mean, my bias is that if you gave a string like precision or recall, that's a perfectly good name.
Okay, so I've got a suggestion here. So why not have training metrics have the possibility of being an association? And then what you could do is you could say precision arrow, and maybe this is completely crazy. Yeah, this may be crazy. I mean, because what I'm trying to do is to get some way to name this thing here.
Yeah.
You know what? The right way to do this is the following. Okay. Either you just say precision. It's a bulk thing, or you say something like metric arrow, whatever that thing is. And then you say display style arrow, plot style arrow, blah blah blah. You say key name or key arrow, blah blah blah, right? So here, if you wanted to, so in other words, you have a choice. If you're going to use, if you really want this netport arrow L2 to be available as a key, see what I'm saying? You do something like this. That makes sense. So that's where the key would be picked up for use in the training, whatever it is.
Well, you would never. I mean, that would be a terrible name for a key, given that you could use a nice short string.
No. I know. The key's name could be Fred here.
Yeah.
Right, but that's my point. My point is that you have a choice. You either get to specify in the training metrics some bulk thing like recall, okay, or you say I want to give details. In which case, puff it out into an association.
Okay, I like that. And then it means that we don't even need to use that arrow syntax there for L2. We could say aggregation goes to L2 and have it be perfectly
much
clear.
Much better.
All right, cool. I mean, the thing is, we should really have done this with all these other places that had spec followed by a bunch of sub options, and we can change those.
I think we should. Okay, where am I saving this, Sushma?
Neural network framework.
Thanks.
Sushma, could you email that to us afterwards?
Yes.
I don't think. Okay, thanks.
Any opinion what this should be? Okay, I'm just going to label this as an SW notes.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going here. All right, so that's the approach we're going to take on that. And then what we have to redocument then in the progress reporting function, etc., is just that any additional keys made available by training metrics will be available, so to speak. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, so all of this stuff here will just go into that association, this interval, etc., etc., etc. Should it be called interval?
That's what we use elsewhere.
Okay. And you've got, oh my gosh, I'm not even going to begin with the level of total weirdness that you're adding here. But it's okay.
we don't plan to support map function reduce function for 12, although we might because it's best and really wants that.
Okay, so here, in terms of this display thing, I don't think slash is a great thing there. I would use some Unicode character, some greater than sign type thing, or some designed blob, so people don't get confused.
Okay.
You could also just make that another option in the association. What the short name should be, the user can choose.
Yeah, that's a good
Definitely,
idea.
it should be an option. I mean, I don't know if it's called plot name or plot label or something, but the default has to be something.
Well, what's the analogous thing would be, it would be a legend, right? What would be the name in, well, whatever. It could be, I don't know whether plot name is a very good word for it, because I think there's an analogous thing in the case of an ordinary plot. I mean,
Well,
that's
plot
more
label,
like no,
isn't
but
it?
plot label is for the whole plot. Plot
Okay,
legend is more the analogous thing.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I think the right thing is something like short name, because we will use this somewhere else too, which is we will use it in reporting when we literally list the value. There's a little value, you know, like can you do a net train just so we can see what's in there?
Yeah, okay. Hold on. So you're suggesting, I mean, because this would be plot legend would be the appropriate name for this there, but you're also suggesting short name, right? And there might even be a long name as well, in principle. Okay, so you want me to do a net train? We should document this. This is nice. Is that correctly spelled? Lynette Amnest. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, I've needed to do this a million times. I should have thought that you would put in one of these weird ergonomic thingies. Brilliant.
Okay. Is that version 12?
It's the 12 prototype build.
Prototype build is broken, apparently. In fact, do one more. Ooh, we've got to enable dynamic evaluation there. Do one more thing. Set validations. You need an option. Validation set goes to MNIST as well.
Why? Okay, all right. So
because it'll show you why I dislike the legend. Okay, there's already a legend that applies to all plots, and it contrasts validation with training. That legend will kick in as soon as you've got to the end of this round. You'll see the blue dot. It'll take a while. Do the following. Can you quickly do? Sorry about this. Can you quickly change MNIST to MNIST sample? The string. Just tack the word sample onto it.
Let's have this go in the background and let's talk about some other things. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So you had a thing about these history things. I want to dig into that for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh boy, what is all this?
It's actually a relatively simple feature, and it's the point that when the validation, usually loss or error, starts to go up again, then there's no point training anymore because your net has begun to overfit. It's just begun to memorize. And so we don't, most like Keras lets you very easily stop as soon as it happens because it's quite mechanical to detect that.
So fine, but I mean, I think the syntax is kind of suboptimal, right? I mean, so more this would be something like loss, arrow, association, blah, blah, blah.
No, because you don't combine this with, there's one thing you look at. You don't look at several things simultaneously.
Well, you're looking at several things here.
No, those are just details of the loss. You see,
What do you mean?
So you're looking at loss, and you want to make, if it goes down by 5%, then you keep training.
I understand. I mean, this is fairly grotesque syntax.
Okay. I
mean, oh, there's your blue dot, by the way. Look, my general attitude towards all of this stuff is I still consider that the world of, this is the assembly language of, machine learning programming, what we're doing right now. Most of what, most actual usage in the future will be at a higher level than all of this stuff. This is still because this is an emerging area and people are still worrying about whether the optimal way of, doing some, it'd be like being able to set weird things about your CPU, about, cache persistence in your CPU. It's not, so I'm not making, that's why I'm not being more persnickety about some of this design, because I think it's really low level stuff that is going to be eventually subsumed in other things. Do you disagree with that point of view?
I mean, I'm trying to imagine today you don't really have very many assembly programmers, right? If your argument is correct, you're kind of implying that in say 10 years, no one will ever be writing code like this.
That is correct.
And I'm not
it's
sure.
The same reason. It's the same thing has happened in numerical analysis. There was a time when people were full of, where they were tweaking every possible parameter of a optimization function, for example. And then they just said, forget it. Some library does this, n minimize does this. Let's not worry about it. That's what I think is going to happen.
I see.
In fact, I'm sure it's going to happen, which is why I'm not worrying that these things are rather, this will be some low-level set of tentacles that are important for getting it right, but are not. Okay, this syntax is pretty horrifying to me, but whatever. And this here, what is this? How do you combine this with something like this?
Well, you don't. So what loss means is you want the loss to improve or you stop training, but you can define your own function that says what improve means.
Now, what is this stuff here?
Okay, but what? Okay. So the property history stuff is, I think it's much, it's a much more high level thing. So it might be more to your taste. Basically, lets you return the history of something. That thing could be a property, or it could be a function itself, which depends on.
By the way, do you want to comment on anything to do with this panel over here, other than the dots in it?
My only point is that the legend there contrasts training and validation set, and fundamentally, that's what the word legend. That's why I don't like the word legend and the way that you're proposing.
Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. Okay. Let's go back over here. So you're saying this is part of NetTrain. This is the return values from NetTrain. We have certain return values right now, right?
Yeah. So we've hard coded a bunch of these histories.
I see.
And the explosion it's exploded, and I want to unexplode it. And in fact, I want to make it much more powerful by just letting you parameterize what you want to record over the duration of training.
How are you giving? Aren't you giving a NetTrain? Aren't you saying there's a list of things that you could return, right? So it needs to be.
It's not actually ambiguous because list is not one of those things.
I'm sorry, what are you saying? So here, there's a property, specific property, but you can give a list of properties to return, yes?
You can give a list of properties, yeah.
Okay, fine. So given that, what are you proposing here?
So this list is a different kind of list. Okay.
No.
I mean, we could call it history. I actually called it history before. That's the first string there. But just to be clear, that whole tuple of list weights interval goes to round. That is one, it's identifying one property.
I realize that. I realize that. I'm complaining about the fact that that's ambiguous with saying, why?
It's genuinely not. It's not ambiguous because list itself is not a property.
Oh, for goodness sake. Are you suggesting, okay, you're suggesting that this here, okay, so this is crazy. Okay.
I mean, is it?
Yes, it's really crazy. Let's clean it up. Okay, we can clean it up. Where was my notebook from before? Look, basically what you're saying is I don't really like this very much anyway, but what version am I in? That is really odd. Where was I actually doing this stuff? Oh, I guess it's here. Okay. All right. So what I'm suggesting is, if that first thing there, okay, so you're saying it's net train of net data properties, correct? Return what you should return, right?
Yep. Yep.
And what's the default thing that it returns? Trained net, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now what you are saying is you want to, in addition, return. So for example, let's imagine that you want RMS weights, which apparently is not something you can return on its own.
Yeah. So in the new world, you would ask for that.
I know how you would ask for that. It would be horrifying. I mean, but what you could say is that property could be history arrow RMS weights, conceivably.
Okay, sure.
Rather than, because otherwise you get in the situation. So then what you can do is you're either asking for, so in this case, what you would do, I don't really like this, but you can say trained net history arrow RMS weights. That's the next thing you're asking for. Look, ultimately, I mean, that might be a shorthand, but ultimately you're going to want something like this. You're going to want an association there. So it's either trained net or it's the association, which is something like payload or indicator, or say indicator. It's not really an indicator. It's, what is it? Because it could be the trained network.
I mean, I suppose it's a property.
Well, okay, all right. So let's try calling it property. And let's see. So we call it property, and we call it something like output form or something. I don't even know if that's right. I don't know. Output arrow evolution plot or something. I mean, this is horribly kind of bank switched stuff. You're suggesting something like this: property output, output arrow history, something like that. History list.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, so you're suggesting that either it's just trained net, maybe there's a shorthand for a case like this, or it's a full association which says what you're getting, like RMS weights.
That will quite often be a function, and then precedence works against the arrow, unfortunately.
Well, tough luck. That's okay. Which will be a function?
The thing that you're recording.
But it's not just recording, right? It's something where, I mean, this is, and I don't know what would happen if you say, what you're delivering is the trained net.
Try it. I mean, it works today.
No. What you're delivering is the trained net, but the output format you want is an evolution plot. That's just silly. Well,
Yeah,
I know you can't. But that's not a good design if it isn't, because what you're saying is that there are some indicators here that you can do, and like even batch size is not something you're going to be able to do, an aggregated whatever. So really what you're talking about is you've got two categories of thing here. You've got things like train net that just are what they are, right? And then you've got a category of thing where some of which have nice convenient names like error rate evolution plot, but you say I want to be able to parameterize error rate evolution plot. So then what I'm suggesting is, okay, so this is what I'm suggesting. Whatever that was, error rate. or quantity. Except we tend to use that. Okay, quantity, format, evolution plot. And then something about how for that you might want even more detail, interval, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what I'm suggesting then is that your alternatives are, you either say, I'm cutting this out because I don't believe in this. You either say trained net, or the next thing that could be in that list is, oh, and I also want this error rate with this decoration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I'm not sure about quantity.
I'm not sure that name is right. What should it be? Value?
It can be a
Property?
function. And it can be something like net.
No, it cannot be something like net anything, because that's kind of silly if you do that. If you say
What?
format, look, these, well, okay, fair enough. You could decorate it that way. All right, fine. Property, error rate, format, evolution plot. Make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a solution for this here, right?
Yeah. Can we look at the weights example? Do you mind doing this quickly with the MNIST thing? Precisely because it is so easy to try it out. Could you try?
Yeah. Okay. Hold on a second. We have to push back. We have another meeting about chemistry that is coming up very soon. Okay. Go ahead.
But you try. So it's Lynette and then MNIST sample, because we wanted to go.
Hold on. I just want to know, of the stuff that we have to do here, can we please prioritize a little bit? I mean, you're complaining about some aspect of the syntax, is that correct? Tally?
Not so much the syntax. It's that, I mean, I'm willing to lose the fight on syntax, but I just want to make sure that we support this transposed list thing as well, and you'll see what that is when I demonstrate. If I can demo it to you.
Okay, what do I do?
So Lynette, and then MNIST, except MNIST sample.
So you want me to net train Lynette, and please, Sushma, that's for you to remember to deal with documenting the syntax.
Yes, already.
By the way, is MNIST sample something that's in the data repository?
No.
Why don't we put it there?
We could, I suppose. That's weird.
Okay, well, look, I can clearly do this. Come on, I can do this. If you care about MNIST sample and if you want that fancy syntax to work, then you got to have, how big a sample? 500, 1,000?
Oh, you know why? Because you're using 11.3 probably. Yeah, use 1,000. Is this 11.3?
What am I doing? Dynamic updating enabled. Okay, what are you trying to show here? Tally, hello, what are you showing here?
Sorry. Third argument, could you do, I don't know. Could you, hello?
Yes, I'm here. Third argument, yes, what?
Third argument, do open list. This is the current syntax. List in the string.
The word list, okay.
The word list, yeah, comma, and then net as a string. Yeah, that's it. Uh-huh. Is this 11.3? Could you have secured build of 12?
I don't know what this is doing. It's probably trying to start the DocuTools system.
And let me get ready to share in case I need to do this myself because of your build. Sorry about the typing.
what this is doing.
I know. So you got to do, there's a bug in this prototype. You got to do interval goes to quantity 1 round. Sorry about that.
Interval goes to what?
Quantity 1 round. Yep. And then you might have to do, first to not wait forever, max training rounds goes to like 10 or something.
Well, we're trying to see the result here.
Yeah. I mean, it's just to actually verify that this is working, because the actual thing I want you to run is slightly different.
Oh, for goodness sake. Okay.
So that'll be a list of nets, right, as we expect.
Okay.
Now, that's too many. Could you just add max training round goes to 5? Because we're gonna run something else. And then the thing that I'd like you to run is the second, instead of net, try weights.
Here?
Yeah.
Why does it think weights training learning multipliers is a thing there?
Don't know.
That should be checked. Sushma, that's for you.
Okay.
Auto completion.
Okay, now here's the crucial point. It's actually, we don't have numeric arrays yet. The problem here is that this is a list of associations, right? And quite often you don't want this, you want the other way around. So you want an association of time series, right?
Association of time series as opposed to a time series of associations?
Yeah, well, yeah, an association of lists rather than a list of associations.
Tough luck, then you can figure out how to turn it around. I mean,
it's really hard. We don't have association transpose. It's
yes, we do. Yes, we do. I mean, at least it's coming in 12.
Really?
As far as I know.
Okay.
If it isn't, I mean, Sushma, that's another thing for you. That's supposed to be in the ILD agenda. I thought it was done.
No, not in ILD at least. We are not doing it for 12, I mean.
Oh.
It's simple. I mean, it's crazy. We haven't had it for like years.
Okay, fine. Okay, separate branch, association transpose on the agenda for ILD.
Okay.
But that's not. We're not introducing a whole giant syntax here for the sake of the lack of association transpose. I mean, let me.
I don't want a giant syntax at all. But yeah. I mean, is it so bad to have form goes to list and then form goes to transpose list or something? If it's a string, you know?
I can do that if you want to. I mean, format here.
Format. Is that the right word? Format goes to list. Is it? I mean, format has meaning in the language,
I know,
right?
I know. Output.
What about form?
That has meaning as well. I think people would generally understand format better than form. Property, format. I think it's okay. Format list and transpose list, I think that's okay. It's kind of hacky, but I think it's okay.
Okay, cool. Then I'm happy.
Okay.
And then property is fine. Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right. Okay, that's that. What's next here? So then
do you approve the removal of this final prefix? This is part of a rationalization process that's been going on for a while to collapse together the keys that you get in the callback functions with the keys that are available as properties for NetTrain itself as final, as the return is.
So where does it say final?
If you go into NetTrain and you see the things you can get out, then I think it's in front of you. Yeah, final weights vector, all of that stuff. It's kind of vestigial. It was from before we realized we could collapse those two lists of keys together.
To what lists of keys?
Well, the keys that are available in
round loss. What are you going to get?
So that would become the final round loss, right? If you asked for it as a property of NetTrain, because all of these are basically, all of these just mean evaluate this thing at the end, get this key at the end.
Well, except when it's not at the end, except when it's a history.
Yeah, but those are going away, right?
Well,
because
those
you
are
can now
turning into
spread-
these things.
turning into those things, yeah. So now that we have this mechanism, it's the final thing that lets us.
No, but wait a minute. What's the name for the quotes format, which probably isn't the right name, for the thing that just returns one of it, just returns the last one?
That's just the property itself.
No,
So
no, but you might want other tentacles in it.
No, those are all related to how to collect it over time.
All right, fair enough. But obviously you've got to continue to support these final things forever here, right? But you can remove them in the documentation, I guess.
Sure, that sounds fine to me.
So you just say it would end up being the mean loss achieved.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. What is this learning rate thing?
We want a new symbol because it's kind of a fundamental thing that
What
it's
is
the
it
one
mean, actually? What units is it in?
that's dimensionless.
What is it? What is it? If it's a rate, it's a something per something.
I don't know, Seb.
Step size.
I mean, I
Or
understand
scaling.
roughly what it's doing. It's going, but go ahead to explain.
I mean, it's a bit weird because the gradients themselves, the whole SGD is itself dimensionally bankrupt, right?
Well,
that.
yeah. I mean,
And, huh?
so the learning rate could be interpreted as having a dimension that makes it dimensionally work out. So basically the problem is that you want to say update a parameter and you want to say d by d something, and that has different dimensions as the parameter, obviously. And so the learning rate could have a
I'm
dimension.
unconvinced by the naked name learning rate. That's what I'm pushing on with asking its dimensions. Because it's just such a weird thing. I mean, because learning rate sounds like the conclusion, but it's not the conclusion. It's some parameter in the discretization of the gradient. Is that true?
Yeah, it's basically a gradient descent step size or something.
It's like a multiplier.
It's just a multiplier of the gradient that was observed. That's the size that you will actually do an update.
Which is not. Whereas learning rate sounds like I'm training my rat and it learnt this maze at 1 turn per day or something.
Sure.
So it just doesn't seem like
my philosophy is like pick your battles. Like this is one of the most fundamental terms in all of deep learning.
Okay, but that doesn't mean we can't add some decoration to this name that still makes it recognizable, but also makes it not totally incomprehensible to somebody. I mean, this is the same thing as when you're doing optimization, if I'm not mistaken. This is, I mean, it's basically as you say, it's a step size for the discretization of the gradient. Is that right? It's the multiplier for the discretized gradient.
Why not call it learning rate multiplier?
Because we've already got. I mean, then I retract it because it's just going to be embarrassing if it's called anything other than learning rate. Honestly.
What is learning rate multipliers?
That's per layer multipliers. So when you want different parts of the net to learn at different rates.
So your claim is we've already cooked our goose by calling it learning rate multipliers.
I think that's your claim, but I agree with it. I think we have cooked the goose.
All right. Growl. Okay. Fine. Okay. All right. Are we basically done here? There were a few comments on the live stream that we should look at here, but
So I think, I mean, if I could sum up, I think we've got you basically made this move twice now, and maybe you should make it a third time, of going from a list-based syntax to an association-based syntax to deal with complexity.
Yes.
And I don't disagree. I think it is a bit more verbose than I prefer, but it's probably clearer in the long term. So I don't disagree with that. The one place you didn't do it is in training stopping criterion. We could do it there. So we could say,
yes, let's do it there.
property goes to loss or something. Criterion goes to loss. I don't know what
Criterion goes to loss, I would say.
Yeah. And then do the other keys strike you as acceptable?
I mean, I don't
as you
understand
say,
why it's relative change. Okay, so we've got 4 cases. We've got relative and absolute change, and we've got whether it's increasing or decreasing. I don't really understand why there isn't plus and minus for the change, but whatever.
Do you know why? Is that for the relative change, it's then like, yeah, maybe. No, you know why? You know why? Because it can be 0, and then it's ambiguous. Like you allow any change to be considered an improvement. You don't have a minimum bound on that change.
So why do you give a direction at all in that case?
Because you don't want it to go the wrong way. You just want it to stay the same or improve.
So what is the setting in that case?
Well, to be like direction goes to increasing, absolute change goes to 0. Absolute change goes to 0 is the default already, by the way. So, because there's no natural scale for these guys.
Okay, and I'm not even going to ask what units patience is in.
That's how many. This happens after validation. So it's how many times, how many validation rounds.
So it's in rounds.
It's in rounds.
So it should probably support the quantity there.
Fair enough. The function thing we can defer.
What function thing?
The function spec, the green.
This thing here.
Yeah, I mean it's
Okay.
a Boolean. It's just something that returns true, false, to whether to stop or not.
Well, I think if you have criterion, the association with a criterion and so on, I think that's perfectly reasonable additional possibility, so long as those keys are of clear origin.
Okay, so that is a thing. There's one thing we haven't decided yet, and that is how those, and it's at the top of your screen. Okay, there is actually, what's tricky is that there are 4 separate things. There's metrics and losses. That's one axis. And then there's also training and validation. So and then there's these then there are these keys that you yourself created when you defined the metrics. Remember, with your
right, or
whatever you called it. So now, do you approve of? We need to make these values available to the user inside callbacks and inside that function there in the stopping criterion. And we can't have those 4 things stomping on each other. So they've got to be namespaced somehow. And my proposal is what you see there, 4 separate associations.
Where do those appear?
So those 4 keys would be part of the giant association that gets given to every callback function. The
By
thing
default.
Yeah, in fact, it'll always be there. There may not be anything in training metric.
I'm not sure. It sounds okay in the quick thinking that I'm doing about it right now. We need to wrap this up. Let me just, okay, a few comments from people on the live stream that feature request for method arrow super convergence.
That's we like
that.
What's that? Okay.
It's something we're investigating, but we're not sure if it's worth adding yet.
Okay. They want a progress report on Onyx export. That's a good story, isn't it?
So there'll be Onyx import for 12, but Onyx export will probably be in 12.1.
Okay. Question about being able to use Python and TensorFlow libraries. That is possible with external evaluate, and is getting better and better. And you can even.
There's no way of mixing TensorFlow with our neural network framework, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's because it's a much more detailed thing. But it's a question of having right. Okay. Will version 12 provide a new way of constructing nets, e.g., a functional specification?
We really wanted that for 12, but we've we didn't have enough time. So that is a 12.1 feature.
Biggest pain point with NetChain and NetGraph is trying to debug why some layers fail to connect. I thought that was all beautifully automatic.
Well, we do try to give good error messages, but we can't. If it doesn't make sense, then we can't construct it. So it's hard to show anything. But net function will hopefully have a better story there anyway. And I don't dispute the user's implicit claim that NetGraph can be hard to build. I really do think net function is going to be like a quantum leap in ergonomics. And by quantum, I mean big, not small.
And you don't mean, never mind. Okay. Suggestion of a context menu for disabled dynamic content. That is very reasonable, and I don't know why. That's something for the user assistance meeting. The gray box that's there should just sprout a button to re-enable it. Am I making sense? Sushma, did you understand that? Just that's a good suggestion, which should have been thought of a long time ago.
I'll send that to user assistance.
Right. Okay. Let's see, a question from Seth Chandler here. Is there any way that the statistics function model fit could accept the same formats as machine learning? Obviously, it should. I don't know whether anybody here is in a position to discuss that. I'm not quite sure which aspects of linear model fit are being discussed here, perhaps in terms of the structure of the data.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably what they mean. Like, there's lots of variations that like classify and predict accept that are quite convenient.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to add. I mean, there's also some categorical data stuff that needs to be dealt with for this. Yeah, that's a good thing to add.
What might work is, I mean, the pre-processing that we have as part of dimension reduce, maybe?
Well, pre-processing in general, there's a big pre-processing module, and that should be, used for linear model fit and so on. I think that's the main story.
Yeah.
All right, we have to wrap here. Linear model fit does not take associations as data, Seth is saying. That's bad. So Sushma, that's for you to contact Goshia and try and get Goshia to talk to Etienne, who has a whole bunch of code that does pre-processing, the general pre-processing for Classify. That's something we should have picked up, actually.
Okay.
All right. Well, for folks on the live stream, thank you for all those comments. And we are about to go to a meeting about computational chemistry. So if you want to join us, join our other live stream about computational chemistry. And for the Neural Net crew, we'll do we have more meetings that we need in this series, or is this pretty much it?
I think we might need one more, but let's make that for mid next week, if that's okay. Mid or end next week.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.